welcome to this explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today because we're going to unpack a truly brilliant philosophy from the legendary management thinker Peter Drucker. Today, we're tackling a massive, deeply ingrained problem that exists in, well, pretty much every workplace on the planet. And that is how leaders, how we actually measure our own value. See, we've basically been conditioned to look at our jobs entirely the wrong way, focusing on our inputs rather than our outcomes. But Drucker offers this powerful paradigm shift that completely redefines what it means to be effective at work, focusing entirely on one absolutely crucial concept: contribution. So if you want to completely transform the way you work and lead, you are definitely in the right place. Let's get started.
Okay, let's dive into this. What do you do to justify your paycheck? It's kind of jarring, right? It makes you sit up a little straighter, for sure. Now, this isn't just some rhetorical question. It's a real, super provocative question that a highly successful consultant, whose story Drucker actually shares, used to ask dozens of top executives. He'd literally spend days touring a client's company, sitting down with directors and managers one by one, and eventually, bam, he'd hit them with this exact question. So how would you answer it? Just think about that for a second. Because how you answer this single question reveals exactly how effective you really are.
Well, when faced with that question, the vast majority of executives immediately default to their effort and their authority. They give answers like, oh, I run the accounting department, I'm in charge of the sales force, or my personal favorite ego booster, I have 850 people under me. But Drucker notes that a very rare few, the true leaders, answer completely differently. They say things like, my job is to give our managers the information they need to make the right decisions, or I am responsible for discovering what products our customers will want tomorrow. Notice the massive difference there. The first group is just describing their daily activities and their status. The second group, they're describing the specific, tangible results they create for the whole organization. They aren't focused on what they do, they are focused on what they contribute.
So that brings us to Section 1, subordinate versus top management.
Here, Drucker takes our standard corporate hierarchy, that traditional org chart we're all so used to staring at, and just completely throws it out the window. He explains that most people spend their entire careers looking down. They're totally preoccupied with their own effort. They're obsessed with their specific department, their narrow little specialty, and the authority they think they should have. They worry constantly about what the organization owes them. And by doing this, Drucker argues, they render themselves entirely ineffective. On the flip side, the truly effective individual looks up and out. They shift their attention away from their little silo and look toward the performance of the whole enterprise. They look outward, because as Drucker brilliantly points out, the outside is literally the only place where actual results exist. They look toward the customer, who is the whole reason the organization even exists in the first place.
Let's look at how Drucker actually defines a subordinate based on this idea. He says, a subordinate is a person who focuses on effort and emphasizes their downward authority, regardless of how lofty their job title might be. Now, this is a really tough pill to swallow for a lot of executives. I mean, you could have the massive corner office with a spectacular view, a huge budget, an impressive title on your door, and 850 people reporting directly to you. But if your daily focus is just on managing that downward authority and the sheer effort of your team, Drucker says, guess what? You are still just a subordinate. Your mindset is entirely limiting your effectiveness.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how Drucker defines top management in this inverted hierarchy. Top management is the person who focuses on contribution and takes responsibility for the results of the whole, even if they have zero subordinates. Think about what that means. This means a junior analyst, a fresh out of college hire, or an individual contributor with absolutely no direct reports can fundamentally be top management. Crazy, right? But how? By taking ownership of the organization's wider goals. When you hold yourself accountable for the performance of the whole shebang and you're constantly asking how your specific work impacts the final result, you are operating at the highest level of management, regardless of your actual pay grade. Moving right along to Section 2, the 3 dimensions of contribution.
So, okay, we know we need to focus on contribution rather than just raw effort. But what does that actually look like in practice? Well, Drucker wasn't just some philosopher in a tower. He provided a highly practical structural theory to show exactly where our contributions need to be directed for an organization to thrive. And he doesn't mince words here. If an organization lacks performance in any of these 3 areas, it will ultimately fail. These dimensions aren't like a buffet where you can just pick your favorite. They're not optional, nice-to-haves. They are the absolutely crucial foundational pillars for survival.
If a company, a hospital, a nonprofit neglects even one of these three areas, Drucker warns that its demise is practically guaranteed. It is an urgent call for leaders to balance their focus. So here are those three dimensions. First, direct results. These are the tangible outcomes, your sales figures, profit margins, or in a hospital setting, the actual quality of patient care. It's the immediate, day-to-day reason the organization exists. Second, building and confirming values. This is all about establishing what the organization stands for. Are you contributing to a culture of integrity, of excellence, of innovation? And third, developing people for tomorrow. Simply put, an organization that doesn't build its future leaders is running on borrowed time. Now, Drucker points out this beautiful cascading effect here. When you set a high personal goal for your own contribution across these three dimensions, you don't just improve yourself, you automatically raise the bar for everyone around you. People adapt to the level of demands placed upon them. Which perfectly sets up Section 3, the Nurse Brian Rule. To really cement this framework, consider this incredibly powerful, real-world anecdote that shows how one person's commitment to contribution can echo through an entire institution. So picture this. A new hospital administrator was leading his very first staff meeting. They were discussing a particularly difficult operational issue, and the administrator thought, "Great, we finally reached a satisfactory solution." But just as they were wrapping up, one of the staff members abruptly stopped the whole room and asked, "Wait, would this satisfy Nurse Brian?" Immediately, the debate sparked right back to life, the previous solution was completely scrapped, and the team didn't stop until they found a much more ambitious, higher quality solution. The new administrator was baffled. He looked into it and discovered that Nurse Brian was a longtime rank-and-file medical nurse. She wasn't an executive, she had never even been a supervisor, yet she had permanently elevated the standards of the entire hospital. And this brilliantly illustrates the core of Drucker's philosophy. How on earth did a rank-and-file nurse wield so much influence? Well, because whenever a decision had to be made regarding a patient on her floor, Nurse Brian would simply ask this one question: are we really doing the best we can to help this patient? That was her contribution. She completely ignored the bureaucracy, the busy work, the downward authority, and focused entirely on the direct result, the patient's well-being. And because of this unwavering focus on contribution, patients on her floor actually recovered faster. Her simple, powerful question became the ultimate litmus test for the entire hospital staff. 10. That is the number of years that Nurse Brian had been retired when that staff meeting took place. 10 years. A full decade after she left the hospital, the standard she set was still demanding excellence from people who, by rank and formal education, far exceeded her. I mean, wow, right? This proves Drucker's point perfectly. True contribution develops people for tomorrow. It transcends your job title, it outlives your tenure, and it shapes the values of the organization long, long after you're gone.
All right, let's bring it all together in Section 4, the paradigm shift.
Let's bring this right to your doorstep. We've talked about Peter Drucker's theory, those three dimensions of survival, and the incredible legacy of Nurse Brian. But how does this apply to your daily work life starting today? Drucker gives us a really profound summary of this entire concept. He says, a commitment to contribution is a commitment to responsible effectiveness. It's a heavy responsibility, actually. If you lack this commitment, if you choose to just, put your head down, punch the clock, and focus solely on your own effort, Drucker says you're doing real damage. You shortchange your own potential, you literally cheat your coworkers out of the excellence they deserve, and you actively impoverish your organization. Effectiveness isn't an accident, folks. It is a deliberate, responsible choice to focus on what actually matters.
So, your actionable takeaway from this explainer is to completely change your internal metrics. You need to permanently drop the vanity metrics of effort and authority from your self-evaluation. Literally, stop asking, how much do I work? Stop measuring your worth by how exhausted you are at the end of the day. Stop asking, how many people do I manage, or how big is my budget? Remember, these are the metrics of a subordinate. They keep your eyes looking down, trapping you in a cycle of busy work rather than meaningful impact.
Instead, I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. This is the only question that truly matters. What can I contribute that will significantly impact the results? I urge you to write this down. Ask it of yourself first thing tomorrow morning, and then take it to your next team meeting and ask it of your colleagues. Because when you stop measuring effort and start measuring contribution, you stop being a subordinate and you start becoming a true leader. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Now go out there, look up, look out, and make a real contribution.